right, so welcome everyone to another edition of Astro Duets. Today we have Jadranka and Roy, and we're going to be talking about how to apply astrology to everyday life, which is, I think, a very interesting subject because usually we're always looking at the transits of Pluto and Saturn, and let's see what happens every day. Before we go to that, I want to thank everyone who has been coming to these sessions for the donations you have been doing. For us, it's helpful. It's so helpful to do our work. I'm going to put in the link also in the chat box. I'm going to put the link in case you also want to do some donations for this session. It helps us a lot. And if you happen that you are in a situation that you cannot make any donation, please don't worry. You can still help us by promoting the association, by sharing this with your friends and people that you think might be interested. And of course, it would be great for everyone it's nice to see you here online. It would be great for everyone, of all of us, to meet in person at the conference that we're going to have at the end of August. And you have all of the details on the website, astrologicalassociation.com. And it's like 60 speakers that you will have access to. And I think, I was talking the other day with a friend from Australia, Vanessa Montgomery. She's also an astrologer, and she's involved in the Astrological Association of Australia. And we were talking about how fortunate we are as young, new astrologers that we are becoming to be part of these groups. And I think we get so much from the experienced astrologers. So it's so good that everyone is here to support this, to help us do our work. And it would be amazing to celebrate all of that in the conference if you can come. If you cannot come all the way to England, remember you can also participate online, okay? So now let's go to the topic of today, Roy and Jadranka. So we're going to be talking about how to use astrology in everyday life. And I don't know, I would like to ask you, well, how can we do this? I don't know. What would you look at? What is the first ideas you have when you hear about this?
Jadranka and I had a bit of a chat earlier on in the week. I'm going to start from very basics, and then Jadranka's got some brilliant ideas on gardening and stuff like that. We're going to gradually develop on through there, but we're hoping that this is going to be, once we set up a basic idea, we hope there's been a lot of interaction between you and people contributing their own experience of using astrology in their everyday life, so that it's not just Bianca and I giving you this information, but a combination. Our wisdom can be combined. So that is what we've got in mind. I just wanted to mention, actually, following on what AO says, that of course, bear in mind that with the conference you get 90 days, I think it is, access to recordings afterwards. So just by booking either online or by coming to conference, you have these 50 speakers at your fingertips for several weeks afterwards. So it's really worth not missing that. And some of these speakers are very rare to hear because they're new speakers, many of them. Very good, high quality, but not generally available all over the world. So, it's a unique opportunity, the AA conference.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to share I'll just say something briefly. When I first got into astrology, the first thing that turned me on, I'm always going to understand this, I'm starting from very basic, was somebody interpreted my sun, moon, and rising sign in a way that I just couldn't believe that anybody who didn't know me could know me so well. And that was just doing that. And that got me into getting hold of complete astrologer and started studying it for myself and so on and so forth. And when I started really knowing having my own chart created, the thing that really taught me about how astrology can help me in your everyday life was just following the moon through my chart. Now, I'm just going to set this up, if I may share my screen. Could you let me share the screen, please?
Yes. Yes, sorry. Can you share now?
Thank you. And I'll just get some solar fire. Now, you need to find somebody that isn't me on this file. Right, okay, who comes first? Al Pacino then, certainly neutral. So if we then set solar fire so that the transit, okay, we'll prove that, the transiting file, we go chart options, display transiting points, and we choose the moon only to start with, and I'll show you what I mean. And then we go into a buy wheel, and there we are, there's the moon there. And now I'm going to move that horrible screen, that's it, good. So you can see that the moon is down here, and you can adjust, if you use the dynamic side of solar fire, you can just adjust the index to a few hours, maybe, if you want to. It depends what you're studying. If you're studying the moon a few hours, say every 3 hours. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I used to do this with the ephemeris book and just follow it and do it all in my head. But nowadays, of course, you can watch it. So if this event is right now, his moon is in the 5th house, and in fact, he's having a moon conjunction. So there should be, you start interpreting it from the point of view, there should be some sort of creative experience or emotional experience he's going through. But then as we start advancing it, that will change as the moon advances well, we'll do it a bit more frequently so you can get movement a bit faster, maybe 6 hours. And the moon just moves on across the, and you see how it fits up the aspects, and it comes up to the 7th house, then the, and then it moves into the 8th house. And you'll notice the concentration of planets there. When the moon moves across all this bundle of planets, this will be the most active time of his month, when all these sort of natal planets are activated. And then it moves on, and again, you can see how you can interpret all these points as it develops. And what I noticed as I observed this, how my life changed as these different things happen, as the center moved from the creative to the relationships, and particularly a rather dead area here, so much, but when it came up to there, tremendous public exposure. So all sorts of things would suddenly come to him from the public as it goes to the 10th house, and involve him in going up certain things for other people as it moves into the 11th house, which will make him retreat into himself and want to get away from things as it moves into the 12th house. And then the moon comes across the ascendant as the new creative expression occurs. And I didn't have computers those days, but I had charts. I had just had to do it from the Rappers and Ephemeris. But it really showed me that how every month it repeated itself. And the reason I mentioned the moon is because it is so easy to follow every month, and you get this confirmation that astrology works. But of course, it's not just that. You can change that and have just the inner planets if you want, and then you start looking at how I extrapolate that from the monthly experiences to the annual experiences. And where the inners get there, we show you there. And so now you can see how the year is likely to unfold. And instead of going for 6 hours, we go for a month or so and change it through over a month and do the same there. And like whether you're using solar fire or just using ephemeris, or whether you're using other software, as you gradually track and build up this experience of astrology working in your life, it and seeing how that relates to the planets moving, not just in conjunction, of course, but conjunctions are particularly powerful. You begin to understand just how everything that happens in your life is got some sort of astrological background. And by knowing that astrological background, like I don't know if you, and I know this is, I've nearly finished this bit, the last couple of days, and we're building up to it this evening, we've got a building full moon, on a summer solstice, with the moon at its lowest level above the earth. If you look at the moon, follow the moon tonight, and you'll see it never rises very far above the horizon, and it sort of rises and sets in a little sort of level. It rises and goes in a little level, then sets in probably only a quarter of the horizon, something like that. And this makes it such a special, dramatic, transformative time. But as we get past the full moon tonight into tomorrow, that's when we start reconcile all the tensions, the pressures, and the differences. It starts getting a bit easier. We start being able to do things that we thought we could never get finished. We start getting on top of our lives again, and that's as we get past the full moon into the waning cycle, which I think brings me on. I don't know if you want to talk about gardening now, Jadranka, or we
No,
should let people
I
come
just
back first. You go on.
I just wanted to mention, when you opened the chart, I realized the transiting moon conjunct within a few minutes. My moon is 2657 Sag, and tonight now it's 26 something. So
Yeah,
it conjuncts, and I always look at these close conjunctions within 1 degree of moon, because I know, because if we look for a wider aspects, then you are constantly under something. So I will always stress that you should look really, really tight conjunction or any kind of aspects. I usually use Ptolemaic aspects with the moon. So 6 simple one, opposition, conjunction, square, sextile, and trine. And you look within a degree. That's my advice, but you can do whatever you want. I find out that they always work the best if they are exact. You have the you know what is going on, you know what is happening. You will know astrologically.
yeah.
I like having a moon diary. It's really good, especially as you said in the beginning, when you're just starting, you want to know more, you want to learn, and this is really easy way to go through your chart in a month. And you have 13 opportunities in a year to go through your chart. So it makes you really look around at each planet and ponder about it and think.
The amazing thing is that when you do that with the moon, when Jadranka said you take a year maybe to do that, and that's what I did when I was into astrology in the early 70s. That's what I was doing. And then I thought, wow, I wonder what happened when Venus goes to what Avuna's been doing. And you start getting your head into Mercury and into Mars. And you start seeing, no, this is not just about how it goes for me month on month, but it's how it's going for me in my life year by year. And then you think, oh, well, wait a minute. What about the outer planets? What about Jupiter? And it's all the same pattern. And it's also a pattern of any conjunctions of planets, of course, from a certain point, waxing, just like the moon does, and then waning back down again. So it's not just the lunar cycle that we're experiencing, but it's the Venus from that point to that point cycle. It's like Venus from where it was when you were born to its opposition, back to its conjunction. Mars the same, Mercury the same, all the planets, and then the outer planets do it. It's made dramatic things like this when you get things like Jupiter returns and Saturn returns and so on and so forth. But it all builds up for me from learning what it's like to follow the lunar cycle on a regular basis. I don't know. I don't know if you want to take this off the screen now, or if there's anything people want to say to give somebody a chance to come back if they want to. And or Jadranka, is the more you want to say.
What I use the moon, I mainly, I look everything, but on a day-to-day basis, it's always the moon that it's like the first. And I love gardening. I have allotment, and the first year when I try to have my allotment, I have zero experience, and whatever grow, it was bonsai type, so it was not looking anything like the other plots.
You want me to show the calendar? Would you like me to show the calendar?
No, I didn't. Well, you can put calendar, yes.
Yeah.
And then one day I planted something, and all of a sudden things were growing like really nicely. And I was thinking, what the hell have I done to get these amazing products? And then I realized, I start looking into astrology, looking where the moon is. And because my grandmother used to use moon in a lot of things that she was doing, like she used to live in a small village, and she was a midwife, and she will use moon, phases of the moon for potions she will make, like to help with the women's stuff and things. That's how she used to call it. And I said, maybe it's a moon that does this to help me to grow. And when I start, first thing I have experienced, I choose half of the plot to plant only when moon is waxing, when it's growing, and just to weed the rest of the, like half of the cycle beat, and first half just when it's from the new moon till full moon, just to plant. And all of a sudden, that half of the allotment start looking amazing. And that's how I start. Then I slowly move into a little bit more details. I go like look in which sign is moon. Is it earth, water, air, or fire? And then I do accordingly. Like if the moon is in earth side, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, it's good to plant or seed anything rooted, like root plants, carrots, potatoes, anything that grows in earth, in the soil. So it's really good. Onions, they will look good. And then if it's in water, anything leafy, if you want to have a nice salad, do it when the moon is in the water signs. You know, so it really, really works. There are various calendars, and Roy a couple of days ago showed me this one on a solar fire. I didn't know that you can attach to it to show you planting and to show you like a little bit of flowers. The moon is in a Libra, so it's good for the flowers. Yes, then you have it here, Libra moving to Scorpio. Still flowers. Can't see
that's in
properly.
fire now. It's only jumped to fire, sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Crops with internal seeds such as beans, squash, or tomatoes. But also when you have things in air signs, there are hot signs, there are barren signs. So it's really good to do some pruning, some weeding, because things will not grow back that quickly.
Yeah, he's talking about flowers, isn't it? He's talking about flowers for air signs.
Yes,
here.
flowers are good in the air, yes, but not the fruit, just the flowers. If you want to have a nice flower garden, you should choose air, Gemini, Libra, and
if you want
Aquarius.
carrots, for example, you choose earth signs.
Yes, inside, yeah. So it gives you these details. Also, the other thing, like if you are going to the hairdresser, what kind of moon? I'm now asking the public to answer me. What kind of moon you would like to have? You are visiting hairdresser, and you want your hair to grow long and thick.
Yeah, okay, that's good. We're going to ask them that question, are we, Jake? Let's see if anybody knows the answer as an answer from what you said.
Someone will ask you the question.
I could give you an answer.
Yes.
As far as I know, if you cut your hair on the full moon, it will grow fast. If you cut it on the new moon, it will go less fast, and it would have time to become stronger. That's what I remarked.
Yes, that's good. And sorry.
Go on, Jadranka, you say what
someone also said Leo moon. Yes, and Leo moon also waxing. Then you will have like a hair like a Tina Turner. So choose. You know, if you want to be like, that's a fire sign. So you have two elements there. They are barren. So you know, the things with the barren sign, you may be very careful going to hairdresser when the barren signs are, because they are hot. So if you are doing some kind of heat treatment to your hair, it may go really wrong. But you may end up with looking really huge hair. So
yeah, I'm thinking about this. So what the original point that you cut your hair on the full moon, was that what you said? Did I hear that clearly?
That's
and you let it grow on the new moon. Yeah, that's the idea. If you think about that, that makes sense, because we're made of water mainly. So the juice of the hair growing is rising through the period, the first half of the lunar period, and contracts in the second half. So you don't cut it until you've got the maximum growth of the month. See what I mean? Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's very logical, very sense. If you extrapolate that to every aspect and every nature of astrology with the same thing, if you don't want expansion, you want expansion, let it go for the first half of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, but let it reconcile and be consolidated through the second half, and so on. Yeah, sorry, you were going to say something else.
I just wanted to say that couple of 2 years ago, probably, I did a course on electional astrology with Sharon Knight. And she first homework she gave us is to she gave us week to decide when is the best time to have a haircut. You know, you should look for at the moon, you should look at Venus because you want to look good. You should look also like a strong areas or something like a Mars, or because using a scissors is like a Martian thing. And she gave us a week. Only time I came, it was probably, I think, Sunday night, 3:30 in the morning. And I said, God, this is not easy. So you can't follow it 100% ever, but you can give yourself idea. You should, I was thinking, perfect. You choose Friday, Venus Day, perfect. Then you look at the moon. It's just, it's not like that. It's but you can still do it like a basic things, not 100%, because like
it's not just the moon in any case. The moon might be good for doing something, but there may be other planetary explanations that make it not appropriate yet. So it might be that you have to use it as a kind of preparatory thing where you store up certain resources to use it in the next lunar cycle when conditions are more appropriate. This is where it gets beyond, you know, when you start really understanding how the planets work. And that's what's so useful about having an electronic system where you can really put all this information up very quickly without doing a lot of mental arithmetic on the way.
I also think it's good to have a program that do it also for you, but it's also good to do it yourself because then you learn more.
Well, certainly when I was starting, I had no electronic stuff, and I was just confronted with the reality of having to recalculate the position of the moon in my head all the time, because all I knew was that the 12-hour difference between one or the other, and the same with all the planetary connections. And then when you come together to do rectification as well, all in your head, it gets a bit silly. We're so lucky nowadays that we don't have to do that so much. But, you know, I'm just wondering, we talked about this basic principle. I mean, do you feel we should really encourage some more contributions from the group, but particularly if there's other things that they think are very important in terms of the practical experience of their life, or if they'd like us to look at particular cycles and see how might the Venus cycle, the Mars cycle sort of apply to your life, you know, as we have done with the moon. What would people like, I wonder?
Yes, it's a good idea. If somebody wants to share, you can unmute yourselves.
Roy, one of the things when I look to a team, to a chart, is if I see particularly points like a Venus stationary or Mercury stationary, very close to such stationary points, on the moment I analyze a team for the first time, or a planet who stands alone in a quarter or in a half of, because it triggers me like it's the only one what is seen or what's not seen. That's the way I approach it. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I need to look at it. I'm just fiddling with my screen. I just realized, did I actually share with you in the end? I wasn't quite sure.
So
You're trying to unshare?
Sorry?
No, I don't need to share because
No, I know you don't. I just wondered because I've lost my way on my computer. I'm listening to you quite happily, but I'm not concentrating because I'm trying to find my way back to seeing everybody. Just bear with me.
As in a chart, when you look at the natal chart, Emily, you look at the things that stands out that are not there, like singleton planets or unaspected planets, are always important because they tell you a story. The planets, there are only one planets in a water or a single out. Like if you have a chart shape, and when you have a moon as a handle, you know, that moon will be extremely important. So it's, when you look at the transit, I think it's also important to look at the planets. They stand out. They give you the message. That's why they are there. I agree with you completely.
To give you an example, I did the chart of my niece who had a disease at birth. She had her spine, which was open. So she had a lot of operations. It gave her something very strong. So she's a very creative person. But when I looked to her chart, Saturn was aspected in the 10th house, and the moon was in the 10th house, clear, nearer Saturn, coming to Saturn, but non-aspected. And that triggered me. I don't know a lot of so I can't explain it in what it means in the disease she had. That's one of the points I have still to study. But in the chart view, it triggered me a lot.
Yes, big point. What was the ruler of her 6th house?
I have to give me a moment. I checked it.
There you go. Could you set it so that the person who's talking comes forward?
Yeah.
I think that'd be nice to see people as they say things. Ah, that's lovely. Thank you.
So it's you know, I'm not, I know a little bit of, because I like traditional astrology, I know a little bit about medical things, because I like the decumberature chart. Is the charts which you make out for the moment you know about the illness, or the moment when you lie in a bed. I know, like recently my husband went to accident and emergency, and I checked the chart for the moment they admitted him in, just to see. And I have a ruler of the 6th, which is illness, was Mars. He had some problems with his urinary tract, and so Mars was good. But the Mars was also ruler of the 7th house, so ruler of the doctor or everything. And it was not it's in Taurus, so not very good position. So I was thinking, God, what will be here? Doctor will make something wrong. They gave him antibiotics 3 days after I got a text. He got a text from them saying, I'm sorry, we gave you wrong antibiotics.
Wow.
Come back, we will give you the right one. So, this is how I use in everyday chart. I just use the simple basic rules of the decumberature chart. I am not medically trained. I don't know, but I just want to know how things will develop. So this is what you can do when you are looking at the decumberature chart, the moment that someone falls ill or is having an operation or it's having a treatment or anything. You can look at this. I'm not medically trained, so I can't give you any ideas what kind of medical matters you should have. I can look at your psychological, how will you feel? I can look about doctor and give me idea how good or bad he will be. I can look at the things, how is it acute, or it's something that will be finished soon. It gives you ideas. So this is what I do. My husband is much older than me, so I'm doing this.
I agree. I do the same. I can say, I don't know what the result will be, but I can tell you what your questioning would be about. But it triggered me, of course. If you have a niece who had a disease from her birth,
yes,
then you say, how do I find that? How does it manifestate in a chart?
Yes, you do.
Yeah,
You do.
Well, I didn't have my answers. She had her answers.
Yes.
Yeah, a couple of points on medical while we're doing it. First of all, I think it's obvious if you're going to have an operation or some major procedure, the aspects are likely to be quite difficult. And you say that. I mean, sometimes people, I'm going to have an operation. I cannot actually choose the date because I'm private or something. Could you elect a date for me to have the operation? No, I couldn't, because it's likely to be a very difficult and tense time, and therefore to look for an easy time is to miss the point. But what you can do is, I think what Jadranka was describing, is to monitor the situation. And I mean, I had this experience with my wife had a very serious illness when she had on this period in 1988, 89, when you had the Jupiter in Cancer opposed to the massive planets coming round in Capricorn, which was associated globally with the end of the Soviet Union. And in fact, at the end of Margaret Thatcher as well at the same time. But like she was going through this very serious procedure for about a year. And what I could trace, this is quite savage treatment in chemotherapy and radiotherapy and that, you can trace when the Mars or the Saturn or the Uranus came through. You could actually track the treatment and how it was. And we reached a point where this can be the most savage experience of the human body, particularly in those days, that you'll give up. And people were giving up, were dying of this illness. But like, because one knew that this was the apex of the problem, that it was going to separate after that, that there was a possible of healing to come. You could see there was hope in the future. You know, at the time that people give up hope, I'm being very dramatic here, but at the time that people give up hope, it is the time that the astrology can help you see there is salvation coming forward, not out of faith, but out of the reality of the chart. So in that way, to monitor the treatment as a complementary thing to conventional treatment, I think it's a wonderful addition to the medical astrology process.
Can I just say something? I agree with a lot of what's been said, but not entirely. And I've had experience of quite serious illness myself, and illness in friends, members of the family. And I learned my lesson having a serious operation 30 years ago. It didn't initially go according to plan. Thank goodness I didn't look at any charts, because I knew that when I came out of intensive care, I didn't want to know at that point what had happened. I just knew I had to keep going. I was in intensive care and I had to keep going, and I didn't want any charts or anything like that. And I can understand the monitoring, but and I very much take the point, Roy, that you know, we have procedures. When procedures become available, you can't argue about the astrology behind it unless you're very, very wealthy and can pay for private treatment. And it will be a difficult time. You're quite right about that. And some of the experience of family and so on has taken me through illness, and friends and family through illness, through death, and through and onwards. So I would worry about suggesting that, for instance, a beginner in astrology could be looking at this, because I wouldn't want them to do anything dangerous, because it's important to understand the astrology properly.
Thank you for that, and you're absolutely right, of course. I mean, and before, you know, any time of when medical insurance, when medical astrology is involved, or people ask about medical advice, my first words are always the standard words, but they're the very important words that I'm not a doctor and I'm not giving medical advice. I'm giving them background to the transit. And particularly when people come along and hope in their subconscious mind, if not in their conscious mind, that somehow astrology can give them a special treat to advantage. The astrology doesn't actually solve the medical problem. It just gets your mind more sensible about it. But one other last point I make is that I'm using astrology increasingly now, and it may be because I've been doing it for so many years, that I don't really look at my astrology that much unless I think, oh God, it's not working right. Like last week, for example, it was totally manic in my head. I don't want to bore you with all the things I was responsible for. trying to get all these people to Stonehenge and all that sort of stuff, make sure it wasn't a disaster, people throwing orange paint all over the place and things like that, you know. But I knew it was a full moon. I knew what I said earlier. I knew it was going to be like that. I didn't expect to be any problems to be solved. I just expected us to deal with everything as nicely as possible. And that stopped me getting worked out. I mean, it got to the point where mobile phones were disappearing, then reappearing. We lost our keys, you know, all these sort of things you may identify with this in your own life. You just because you knew astrology didn't solve the problem, didn't necessarily find the keys unless you're an astrologer. But at the same time, you began, your mind was good about it. You were clear. You weren't attached to the issues. You were trying to deal with them and realize it was only for this and it was all going to work out all right. So, yeah, I mean, what you've said is exactly cautionary and right. And thank you very much for that. So,
Thank you.
I agree with you, Roy, because, for instance, she said, she put it in the question, what every person who doesn't know astrology could put in. She said,
yeah.
you remarked that my parents separated when I was at that age. How is that related to my chart? Because my sister had that same divorce. And it is, how do you experience it? And her experience is not at all the same. So it will show in a different way in a chart.
Yes.
Yeah,
One event, two experiences.
yeah. I think, Nila, you were trying to add something?
Oh, that's very thoughtful and kind. Yes, I was thinking I would contribute one observation, actually, that on the discussion of your operation or knowing whether it's better to know or not what's happening in the skies. There is a meta level. Everything that we are doing, everything that's happening in our lives, even our doubts about astrology, they are all governed by the skies, by the planets. So whether or not you think it's good or bad for you is also conditioned by your horoscope, your chart, and what the universe is doing at the moment. So everything's like, you know, one level higher. We cannot exist outside of astrology because it governs our lives. And it might be our mindset, it might be our current transits, which make us hesitant to look into the chart if we are astrologers. But in general, it's all there. And I would kind of agree with Roy that it kind of gives you peace of mind, or maybe it eases the stress, or it just lets one let go and let God. If you just check your chart and you know, okay, this is why it's happening and it's not my fault, right? You can sort of understand how we are governed by the universe and just relax and just go with the flow. So for instance, I had an extremely drastic life experience, and it all had to do with Pluto crossing my MC. And it was like a near-death experience. And had I not known that it was Pluto crossing the MC and that it would last 2.5 years and more, I would have been completely desperate. It was like losing the floor from under your feet. But then I knew that this was going to last, but that it was also going to pass. Like Roy says, that, you know, I always try to look for the optimistic things, that this too shall pass was my mantra of the day. Like, this too shall go. So I have been so grateful to astrology for helping me explain what's happening in my life for many, many years. And it's an absolutely precious tool, and used carefully, it is so enriching and so healing as well. That's what I wanted to say. And I have one more observation that I wanted to share, and I'm a little bit surprised that it doesn't come up very often. People don't talk about the nodes of the moon. And like the North Node and the South Node, that's our life axis, that's our life path. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that the South Node points to our previous lives, and a North Node points to where we are headed this lifetime. And it's extremely valuable information. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say that is that, of course, you say that our life is totally governed by astrology. Well, in a way, governed probably not the right word, but you know, it is. In fact, the way you're talking about astrology is the freedom you have. The fact that you've taken that intelligent understanding, that wise understanding of the energy, and therefore using it without attachment, or with, as far as possible without attachment, gives you a certain amount of freedom of the astrology. That doesn't mean you're not concerned within the criteria that's there, but you're getting the best use out of it. So this is how we're free. It's the most ironic statement that everybody who attacks astrology, nearly everybody, say you can't believe in that superstitious nonsense. And in fact, the opposite is the case. You know, we liberate ourselves in our lives by understanding, not by believing. Anything else, AJ? I really want to hear from other people who want to just lay stuff on. Anybody else want to say anything? Or there's areas we could study, or there's areas of practical application of astrology that we can look into.
If I may, there's plenty of
Yeah.
things. I mean, I just want to share about my experience. I just take a look at the sky practically every day, look at the transits that are happening, and I'm just looking for things to look forward to. So even unlike, you know, days when one doesn't feel so great, it's nice to look forward to, I don't know, having a sun transiting Venus, because I know that on that day when I look in the mirror, I'll be feeling good about myself, you know, or, you know, as you mentioned, the moon traveling around, or amazing days are Mars returns. Like every 2 years you have a Mars return. And those are days when I can shift cupboards. Like I have so much energy, I could climb up the walls. So I look forward to those days. And I even actually planned like heavy manual work for good Mars transits or stuff like that. So it's extremely valuable. And it also explains like Saturn transits are, you know, we all know Pluto, Saturn transits, Uranus transits are excellent because something fresh comes into your life. You can expect surprises, expect the complete unexpected. And so, yeah, I always try and pick up like what are the nice things that I can look forward to, and it helps me get through the days when there is, you know, moon on Saturn or stuff like that. So I know that there will be, you know, and even like today for me, I have Mars on Saturn, and it told me that things are going to go wrong and I'll be frustrated and angry. But I also have a couple of very nice transits today, and they completely canceled out the Mars on Saturn. So, you know, it's always funny and it's entertaining, and it gives a bit of lightness to your everyday life when you know that you are not responsible for everything.
Can you tell me what sign it's in, this Mars-Saturn conjunction? Mars on Saturn at the moment.
It's in Taurus.
Yeah, because I mean, it's interesting that you're giving us. I mean, don't misunderstand me. You're taking this prominent explaining role of the thing, which is lovely, but it's Mars-Saturn gives you that kind of wish to act. You see what I mean? It's a very positive way of using the energy.
Yeah, Mars is like hitting on the Saturn and saying, no, I don't like you to be holding me back.
You don't have to stand back, get this across, you know, structure things, you know, make it happen.
But I don't feel frustrated. I feel like, you know, I feel like I'm active despite the Saturn. So
that's the Mars hitting the
Mars
Saturn.
Mars wants to act. Saturn is holding back and Mars wants to speak. So here I am.
Great. Cycles. I mean, Mars. You mentioned the Mars cycle. It's very interesting. When I was working in the city some years ago, I was doing some sort of astro advice to a guy who was investing in European banks, and like I noticed that when Mars went into retrograde, there was a period when that period of the markets tended to go sideways. They stopped ascending and they get consolidated and things like that. And that happened for about 4 or 5 cycles that I could take back on the price, you know, over the years. Maybe it always happened, you know. And then we came to 1994 to 1995 when Jupiter conjuncted Pluto in Sagittarius, and we had a Mars retrograde back from Virgo to Leo. And that was the moment that the stock markets took off and accelerated upwards to an enormous climax in the year 2000, when, of course, we had the dot-com fund. You know, as you know about these things, will know what I'm talking about. Now, the point is that certain cycles can have very powerful effects, but you have to see them in terms of other cycles. And that sort of interruption, the outer planets, and this great sort of social change in the whole way that technology was being understood in society, completely overrode, particularly as Mars was retrograding back into Leo. It encouraged speculation, you know. So I'm just trying to go you how you can put the various aspects together to see how they modify each other. And you know, I just feel that the foundation of our life is the outer planets, the interaction through the weeks and months of the year, it's the inner planets. And what triggers on, particularly through the month, I know, with the moon, but to a certain extent, the moon over the day when you get the angles all coming into it, this is what triggers it. So it's complex, but at the same time, when you study something like the moon or fundamental like the inner planets, you get a very good understanding. You can see those planets working, even though it's always got to be in the context of all the other bodies that we've studied.
Of course. That's why I was also commenting last time, I believe, that it's very difficult to isolate one concrete transit or one concrete planetary aspect, because there's so much stuff going on. And you just need to feel into it, and probably it takes experience or, you know, practice, that you start feeling, okay, this comes from Mars and this comes from Saturn and that comes from Jupiter. And it's a mix, you know, things. You cannot just only say today is the day of this particular transit, because there are 5 other things going on. So it's like a symphony. There is a lot going on.
Yeah, a symphony, that's lovely. The Symphony of Life. There you go, that's a title for an astrology book. Astrology, the Symphony of Life.
Yeah.
Who's going to write it? Which one of you is going to write this one? I'm not.
Actually, this is what NASA is doing this. I would like to recommend to everybody. I discovered this a year ago. NASA has started converting digital data from the space telescopes to music. And it's called sonifications. You can Google NASA sonifications, and all the different nebulae and you know, galaxies have sonifications on YouTube or on the NASA website, and the universe is music.
Yeah,
I can't remember a couple of years ago at Lodge, God, that was 5-6 years ago, we had a chap who had his own interpretation of music of the spheres. And he had a CD that I bought, and I never ever listened to it. I know it at the moment I bought it, but I did because the talk was amazing. Can't remember the name now, but he was really into it, the music of the spheres.
That is an old idea.
I think
Very old idea.
Ancient.
I think Winnie is trying to add something to the conversation. Winnie, yes?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to put a plug. I come from Canada, and although I'm living in Wales now, but in the America, a lot of people did not use or know about the graphic ephemeris, which I first found out about in Britain, and it is so useful for following daily, monthly, yearly. And so every year I do mine up at the beginning of my calendar and use colors to put different planets and mark in dates, and it looks like a total mess, but I can, and then at the bottom I put the house positions of Mars, like Mars going through the houses, and you can even draw in the progressed moon. And the advantage of that is you see it more, you see the retrograde periods and then coming back over the same spot. You see it graphically at a glance if you do it for the whole year. So it's just really useful to say, okay, I've got Pluto going over Mars in any kind of aspect. This is 45 degrees, so it's multiples of 45. But I got Pluto going over Mars in January, coming back retrograde in July, August, and then again in November. So I can expect, and then if you use it as a little bit of a diary, kind of if events come up. I got the US election marked in November, and so I know a lot of people are familiar with them, but an awful lot of people still aren't, and I just find them very...
thank you for that. That's a very, I agree. I find them very useful. And I don't know if you use it in Solar Fire, but I do amazing things. You do really intense things like the moon declination over 30 years, for example, gives you an amazing description of how the moon moves. as well
And
as the detailed
also,
things you're talking about. Sorry, go on.
Nila, I hope I pronounce your name right. She said we should look at the good things. So instead of 45 degrees on a graphic ephemeris, you can put the trines. So we
Yeah.
see only nice things that are this is what you said. Looking at the good things, don't look always at the crisis, because there are so many good things happening as well.
Mm.
Okay.
Although they call for some kind of action, the 45s, the 90s.
Yes,
the
I
180s.
know. Sorry.
So we can
I
be
just want,
proactive about it.
yeah.
In the diary, one that you write, do you write things that happen? Do you write it forward, like what you expect is going to happen, what you would like to happen because you're looking at the ephemeris, or do you write it backwards, like when you have the experience, you write what happened? Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Usually I keep notes. I mean, I run out of space here, so maybe the next page I'll just put notes for particular events that happened that year, and they could be personal ones or they could be global ones. And then I can look back to 10 years ago, just pick up my old diaries and figure out what was going on. But I also put, I mark the transits in the, in the date part of the, like in my date part,
Yeah.
I put in what to expect, like, so I know week by week what's coming up. I don't go with I had a friend who marked every single like Mercury transit, and John Ware, who some of you might have known, and we used to talk about it. And I like the bigger, slower moving ones. And he loved to watch the transits within a day, so we have some interesting
very good, yeah.
conversations about that. But I think it all depends, and then you just see what works, but it helps you to use it. Or as I think, I can't pronounce your name, Jadranka, or one of you was saying about, yeah, if something is a bit challenging, you see how it's going to be gone. These things are ephemeral, right?
I don't know if I've mentioned this in the previous group, but the way I became a professional astrologer was to give up everything and travel around the world for 2 years between Britain and New Zealand, where my wife was born. And we used to keep a diary, and that's what I decided. I had a diary 3 months ahead, which would have all the transits, and I used secondary progressions as well, and some other factors, the technical information. And then as we carried on, I tried to act accordingly or positively with the energies it was. A couple of times I did exactly the opposite of what the energy actually suggested, and noted down what had happened in the way you're describing. And I mean, I learned astrology by the time I got to the other side of the world and started reading the books that were being written in those years by astrologers who were established in America and other parts of the world. I realized that I'd probably learned not as much as, but very much near to what was in those books just by doing it practically myself. And so I do encourage you to do something like that feels comfortable for you, because it's amazing. You learn how astrology works by using it. I mean, one of the most magical ones I could say, just as an example to finish this one, is when I was in Sudan near Khartoum. In those days, Sudan was a wonderful place to live. Tragedy what's happened to that country. And some local people took me to this sacred place. And they had this idea that my wife and I were going to take on Islamic faith. And they took me to this very special shrine. And I looked at the sky and I could see the moon, Venus and the moon very close to each other. But I realized that Venus can never sit in the crescent of the moon, because the surface of the moon would be in the way of Venus. Even if it was in front of it, wouldn't happen. And that made me realize, yes, it's a very magical, transformative time, but it's not a time to make clear decisions. I mean, that's just a very silly little personal thing, but at the same time, just by observing the heavens, you can see how life changes, particularly if you're living in the area where it's a clear sky for many long period of time. Every night you see the Jupiter coming closer, or the moon coming closer to Jupiter, He's coming close to the moon, and all these other things, Mars coming up. You see all these things, and you look at what's going on in the world, and you think, this is exactly how people are behaving. They're dancing to the heavens.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you
Right.
do that, you start keeping diaries of that if you feel that's a good idea for you. It's a wonderful way of learning astrology, of being better at astrology.
Can I share something on the music and dance?
Yes.
Yes, the spheric music is an old term. Pythagoras and his Greek school, they believed that there is some spheric relationship between the planets and the sun and moon. And Johannes Kepler, he elaborated on that in his third law on planetary motion. And in that book, I haven't read it, but I read about it on Wikipedia. He rejoices about the planetary choir of our solar system of the 6 planets. And he says it's a choir that is inaudible to the ear, but is perceivable by the soul. And I find that such a beautiful notion, because this was 400 years ago. And now NASA is finding that actually, yes, the frequencies and the radiation and the data and all kinds of geometry in space can be converted into music. And Kepler was right. And the old Greek philosophers who knew about spheric music, they were right. So I think this is just absolutely beautiful. This is my discovery of the last year, and I'm so happy about it. We are actually living in a beautifully harmonious, melodious, musical world. And it's just,
The Planet Suites by Gustav Holst that everybody knows about, but everybody knows that's the thing about planets, but it is pretty good. It does describe the nature of the planets quite well, I think, each one of those movements, in a way, that's the beginning. The only thing about doing sort of music of distant galaxies and all the rest of it, it might be more to do with what they look like than what they're actually intrinsically are. I would rather focus the music on what we're studying in astrology, which is the solar system and the angles. And this is our experience, isn't it? We don't want it just to be a pretty picture with a pretty bit of music, a bit like fireworks on New Year's Day in London, something like that, But I'd like to see the connection, so that the sound is really creating what we understand the astrology to be.
Yeah. Okay.
That will be a long discussion.
Yeah, it's a big job. People keep on trying it.
Yeah, and we are arriving to our time. Wow, amazing. So thank you everyone for participating today. I think it's so nice that some of you shared your impressions, your ideas. I think it makes it so much more alive. And thank you, Jadranka and Roy, for guiding us at the beginning with this whole idea about the moon and following the moon through the chart and the signs. And now I know I went to my hairdresser today. Now I will check if it was a good idea or not, because I
In
did it.
Sagittarius. Moon is in Sag, so it's a fire sign. It will not grow, but it's like, yeah, good.
Yeah, confrontation with reality tomorrow, guys. Capricorn.
Yeah.
So
Get
thank you,
down to work.
everyone. And we will see you again on the next Astro Duets, which is next month. And it's going to be on the 26th of July at the same time. Still, if you can sign up from the website, that's great. So we can know about how many people to expect. And thank you so much for coming here, bringing your energy. And we'll see you again next month. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.